Alright, so this is day one. This is my first session with Toby. And I haven't worked with him yet. All I've done is just love on him a good amount. Just get familiar with him. And so before we start our training, one of the first things that I'm really looking for with him is to see how food motivated he is. And if I can get him to work for his food. So what I'm gonna do, this is with luring. This is called luring. I'll just set the treat in front of him, and I'll see if I can get him to take a couple steps in a certain direction for his food. And so my goal is just to get him to take one step in a direction and then add more steps as we go. So it looks like he's already pretty confident. So you can see my goal by the end of the luring session is just see if I can get him from my left side to my right side. Good boy. Good boy. So it looks like working with Toby's gonna be nice and easy because he wants to work for his food. Now that I know that he is food motivated, what we want to do is get him familiar with the e-collar. And so because this is going to be going around his neck almost every day, we don't want him to have a bad association with it. And so same thing as luring, what I'm going to do is have him try to figure out how to work for his food. So every time his nose touches his e-collar, he gets a reward. And he's actually pretty quick. It's like understanding nose touch, treat. Nose touch the e-collar, treat. Good boy. Yes. And then what I'm going to introduce now is anytime that he does a behavior that we like, we're going to add the word yes, and within 1 second of saying yes, I give him a reward. So he learns yes equals reward. So now you can see he's all over it. He's just jumping up and kind of sniffing the e-collar. That's what we want them to do. We don't want them to pull back or avoid the e-collar in any way. Yes. And we'll do the same exercise for putting the e-collar on and off of him. And my goal is for him to want to put his head through the loop. So I'll start with the treat, and then we'll kind of bring him into it. See how he's kind of pulling away there? I'm just going to work him through it. So I put it on, I take it off, treat. So he's a little bit scared of it. That's okay, it's kind of big. Yes. Boy, Toby. Our goal at the end of this drill with him is for him to actually walk his whole head through and put his head through the hole. And so that's not always going to happen on day one, which is perfectly okay. Toby. So that's something we're gonna have to work with in time. So another training exercise that we work on with the dogs is saying yes, followed by a reward. And our goal during this exercise, yes, is to say yes and give the dog a reward within 1 second. Yes. The sooner that we can get the treat into his mouth, the better, but we don't want to say yes right as the treat is getting into his mouth. Yes. 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 So we're shaping them to understand that when we say yes, there's going to be a reward followed by that. And yes. What we do next is we're going to introduce him to what the stimulation feels like from the e-collar, and I'm going to start at 0, click and hold and scroll up so I think that he feels it. You can kind of see that it wasn't a major reaction, but he kind of took a step back and he kind of turned his head. So let's see if I can get him. Yeah. So when I press it and I'm first introducing it, Toby, every time that I press the stimulation, it's going to be followed by a reward. And so that he understands the stimulation is a good thing. It's a form of communication that we're building with him. And so now what we're going to go into is called pressure on, pressure off. So anytime that he walks away from me and the leash is tight, the stimulation comes on, and I'm going to work him towards me. Yes. So now I'm introducing pressure on, pressure off. So he gets away, leash is tight, e-collar is on, I press it, he turns around, yes. Yes. Oh. Yes. The whole goal of pressure on, pressure off is whether the leash is tight or not, when that stimulation comes on, we want them to turn around and look at us, make eye contact, and come back towards us in our general direction. Yes. Toby. Yes. You can see that he kind of felt that one a little bit more. And so it's still a brand new feeling to him. We're also testing his strength threshold, or his stress threshold. If he feels a feeling like this, that stimulation and it's brand new, does it freak him out? How does he actually respond to it? And he seems to just move. Yes. And so now that he's starting to be more familiar with the feeling, I'm going to turn it down. So at first it was a 4. So now I'm going to put it back down to a 2. And see if he can feel a 2. If not, I'll go back up to a 3. Toby. Yes. Oh, good job, Eddie. Good job. So those are like the first 4 main drills that we really work to help them understand what the e-collar is, how to turn it on and off, what is pressure, and how they can start learning and building this line of communication between us and the dogs. Every time that I tap the e-collar, yes. Right after I tap the e-collar, I'm going to say yes. Okay, so that one's a little bit hot. See how he came towards me though? That was just from the pressure on, pressure off that we were working with him for not even 30 seconds. Yes. So I press the e-collar, so I apply stimulation. Yes. Yes. And our whole goal with that is If they feel the stimulation, we want them to look in our direction, make eye contact with us, and so that's what I'm shaping and rewarding him for. Yes. 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 Yes.